Pay attention to the reaction, because that's the whole story. The reaction to some of these horrific news stories that happened over the weekend. It'll tell you everything you need to know and where we need to go. Look at the reaction so far, early on to the just absolutely horrific, and it keeps getting worse, Rob Reiner story. The great director. Just so many movies. I mean, my God, so many different movies we've had in our culture and what happened to him. Look at the reaction to that. And yeah, I'm going to make a comparison. And then compare that to the reaction, even from himself, to the Charlie Kirk murder. And it'll tell you everything about where we are right now and where we got to stop. It's real eye-opening. It really is. And also the same reaction to those horrific other stories. Brown University. What's going on? And that mess of an investigation and the reaction so far. And the lack of questions being asked. And also Bondi Beach in Australia. The reaction to that story as well. And in the Bondi Beach story, would you even know if we didn't have a free internet right now? No. You would have heard about, a random Hanukkah attack on Bondi Beach, Australia happened. That's what we would know. That's it. That's all we would have known if this was 6 years ago. That's it. But it's not all bad. There was a great show of unity for our country with this. This Army-Navy game has become so much more, and it happened on Saturday. It's become so much more than just a football game. It really, truly is become one of the few symbols of unity we have. And it was great. And don't let anybody tell you that the military, because of remember the seditious six? They were telling the military to defy orders and even military officers, those at the military academies, ignore Trump. Yeah, I don't think that really took hold because he got a great reaction over the weekend. Anyway, we'll get to all of this. Thanks for finding me. Appreciate you. Tough weekend of stories, but we're going to make it better. Thanks for finding Wicked Radio live stream. And then the replay, all your favorite media channels, YouTube, Facebook, right here on X, and the audio podcast, too, gets posted right after we're live. But let's get right to it. Boy, can't think of a more horrific any story of the way that Rob Reiner, now we know, died, who found him, which was his daughter, and now a suspect in the case who's still at large, his own son. Just absolutely horrific all the way. And it's, look at the reaction, though. The reaction to this story so far is fascinating to me. It's just amazing. And most of it, on social media. Most of it's online. But you'll hear this, too, out in the real world when you talk to people at work or your friend group or whatever it is. Pay attention to how people react to this and compare it to another horrific thing. Not to compare murders, but the Charlie Kirk reaction. Let's go back a little bit to the Charlie Kirk reaction. What did we hear? A lot. I heard this from a guy sitting next to me on a plane, by the way. Not just online. This was real life on a plane. Right after it happened. I'm sitting there, stuck in the window seat. This guy was in the middle seat next to me. He goes, I didn't like that kid. I don't really mind that he got, literally said this. I'm quoting you. I don't really mind that he's dead. I think all he did was sow divide. I'm stuck in a window seat. What am I going to do? Start a fight with the guy and start to, start to point out how wrong he is? The only thing I said was, did you hear him say those things, or did people tell you he said those things? They didn't know what to say from that. But whatever. That's neither here nor there. But that kind of reaction. And then we all saw on social media the celebration of him dying. And it was disgusting. It was absolutely disgusting. Look at the general overall reaction to Rob Reiner dying, though. And for the most part, you can't always generalize. People are very, very sad. Even though, politically, and this is a good example of this, I've even said it on here to you guys before, of all the Trump derangement syndrome victims and the wacky, loony Hollywood libs, he really was sad, but he really was probably the worst. I mean, he had theories that were just so insanely wrong. Just nuts. I actually said on here, I think it was a couple of months ago, sadly, I said on here, on the live stream, if anybody in Hollywood is like compromised, like they have dirt on them to try to go after Trump and a big Hollywood voice, it would be Rob Reiner. He was that wacky. Despite all of that, what's most of the reaction you've seen and heard so far from everybody? Even people that didn't like him, right? Didn't like him politically and all this stuff. People are sad. People are sad about that, and they should be. And that should tell you, first of all, as horrific of a story that is, that should tell you that people still have a soul. But there's a definite divide. There's no doubt about that. There is a divide. Because for the most part, common sense, normal, everyday, middle of the road, center right or moderate or whatever you want to call them, Americans are very sad about Rob Reiner, even though they disagreed with him and thought he was a lunatic politically. First takeaway is that tells you that still exists. We can still have a soul in this country. We still can. And that's great news. Those are the same people who are reacting that way that were obviously just as sad for Charlie Kirk. Didn't hear that from the lunatic fringe of our society. You didn't hear that so far. There's a distinct difference in how people are mourning somebody like Rob Reiner and somebody like Charlie Kirk. Distinct difference in how that is. I think it tells you that people who still have common sense, and that's still most of the country. Don't let anybody fool you. Most of the people that still have a soul and a heart and a soul and common sense can look past all this political BS and still feel for somebody. Still see the human side of it, the human element to this, and say, "Oh my God, that was horrific," you know. Great example of this was exactly what we were just talking about. Here's an interview from just a few months ago with Rob Reiner, rest his soul, talking to Piers Morgan of all things, and Piers was asking him about the Charlie Kirk thing. Here's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. This is where we should be. Rob Reiner probably disagreed on everything Charlie Kirk ever said in his life, all of it, anything, and still had enough heart and soul to be able to feel sad and down about that. This is from just a couple of months
ago. You first heard about the murder of Charlie Kirk. What was your immediate gut reaction to it?
Well, horror, absolute horror. And I unfortunately saw the video of it, and it's beyond belief what happened to him, and that should never happen to anybody. I don't care.
I just say I don't care what your political beliefs are. Get beyond all that crap. The media did this. They want the divide. They want all of this. But there's your proof right there. Rob Reiner, who you could, guys, literally, you couldn't find anybody more far left. You really, truly couldn't. I mean, the epitome of like somebody who had Trump derangement syndrome. But even he found it in his heart and soul to say it was horrific, and he was so sad and so melancholy about the death of Charlie Kirk. There's your proof that we can get by all this crap. There's your proof right there. Now, the people, on the right or center or what do you want to call it, for the most part, is saying the same thing about Rob Reiner. Oh, it doesn't matter. I don't care what his politics were. That's just so sad. His movies. He meant something to me personally because of the movies, maybe you can say, Stand By Me. When Harry Met Sally, A Few Good Men, Spinal Tap, so many others. And that's the difference. And yet you had these cretins out there who didn't feel the same for Charlie Kirk at all. But Rob Reiner even did. Again, the takeaway is, as horrific as both of those stories are, those words out of Rob Reiner himself, rest his soul, what a horrible way to go, proves that we're not so frickin' lost. We're really not. Let's get beyond all this political crap and this divide and putting people into categories. Get beyond all that crap and look at the human element again. It is possible. It absolutely is. And I think Rob Reiner, his words from the past prove that. We can all go back to disagreeing on policy, but still be human about it. It's just so sad. Now, do you have some idiots out there who are saying, good, oh, he won't be missed. He wasn't MAGA. He wasn't Trump. Yeah, of course there's idiots like that. Just shut up. It's not the time. There's always going to be idiots like that. Again, you can't generalize about everybody. But for the most part, most common sense, middle of the road, just hardworking Americans who want to live their lives, patriots, are saying, yeah, that was sad about Rob Reiner. Disagreed with him, but so what? And that's what we got to get back to. Anyway, another big story over the weekend. This is another sad one. Brown University, of all places. Brown University. Ivy League school, right? Got to send my kid to an Ivy League school. It's going to be safe on campus. It's a gun-free zone. Here's the first lesson and the first takeaway. You hear gun-free zone, that means you or your loved one or your kid has to keep his or her head on a swivel at all times. So all that means is you're less protected. That's the God's honest truth, and we saw it once again. But you can't find an investigation more screwed up than Brown University shooting over the weekend. This was messed up from the get-go. Let's start from where we are now and then work ourselves backwards, because where we are right now, you might have gone to bed thinking, oh, they got a suspect, they'll find out what this is all about. No. Because as of this morning, that suspect is gone. That released. Yet they still released his name. Screwed up from the get-go. Here's the latest, and then, like I said, we'll work back.
Where the person of interest in the Brown University shooting has just been released, turning the case back into a manhunt.
And Brian Yanis joins us live there with the very latest. Brian, this happened late last night. They had someone that they thought was a person of interest, but they have to let him go if they don't have enough evidence, right?
Yeah, it's exactly right. Good morning. A stunning turn of events here at Brown University when authorities last night at about 11:30 at night held that press conference and told the world that they had the wrong guy and are now looking for a person of interest, the gunman responsible for killing 2 students and wounding.
Good work. Not only did you apparently bring in the wrong guy after not doing anything, and there were no updates if you follow this story for hours. We're 6-7 hours into this thing, and nobody had any clue about what was going on. Kids were still in a classroom, like locked up. More on that in a second. But you got somebody in custody. Apparently you think that's the wrong person now, yet you released his name. What the hell is going on in Providence, Rhode Island? Incompetence is going on. I mean, that's your answer. Speaking of incompetence, this was amazing. This was still while the gunman was still at large. They still had kids in classrooms, like as of this moment. Good for whoever this reporter is grilling the president of Brown University, who had no clue what was going on. In real time, how it got there, no clue what's going on at her school or where her students were.
I'm catching up right now.
President, with all due respect, 6 hours after this shooting, and you said you don't know what was going on in that classroom? How does that happen? Were they taking an exam? Were they meeting for a club?
I don't know. I don't know.
6 hours later, and you're the president, and you don't know.
I do not know.
Well, that's kind of concerning.
Was evidence as a result of any?
Wow. She only makes $3 million a year. Don't worry about it, But Ivy League schools, we know everything that's going on. How many hours in, and they got the wrong guy? How many? They've got an endowment apparently of, I read last night, $8 billion. Is that right? $8 billion, not $1 billion, but they'll have enough security cameras to catch anybody. I mean, you rob a Wendy's today, they'll find you in 15 minutes. But this guy shoots up a classroom in an area, in an engineering building at Brown University, and they can't find this or the right person. Yeah, that's incompetence. What's the takeaway? Again, I'll say it again. Gun-free zones. Careful. Be very, very careful. Because if you've got a kid at a school that is a gun-free zone, and that's pretty much all of them, you've got an incompetent mayor, university president, and most likely campus cops who don't know what they're doing because they've never probably faced anything like this. And when a real emergency does actually happen, you've got a real problem on your hands. So there's Brown. Good job. Good job in the investigation. I will say this, and I'm not trying to throw a conspiracy theory at you. You know what I'm all about. I just want you to ask questions and look at this stuff with common sense because we need more of that these days. I will ask one question, and I'm going to leave it at that. One of the victims, her name was Ella Cook, and I think it's totally fair, and I think it's totally right to ask this question. One of the victims, sadly, Ella Cook, beautiful young girl, I think from Alabama. She was the club president. She might have been the founder. I don't know, some conservative club. Might have been a young Republican thing or something at Brown University. Brown. I don't know if you're familiar with Brown University as an Ivy League school. There's liberal colleges. And then multiply that by about 10,000 further left. Then you've got Brown. So can you imagine what it's like to be an outcast of a leader of any kind of a conservative group at Brown University? And that's what this Ella Cook girl was. Murdered by whoever, whatever this sick gunman was. They had about 15 members in the club, reportedly, of that entire school, where you've got the leader of a conservative movement. I don't know how far conservative, whatever it is. What I'm trying to say is goes against the grain of most of the student and definitely academic population in that school. And she's one of the ones that got shot. I'm just asking a question. That seems way, way too coincidental to me, of an entire campus full of people. And if that was, and there are some reports out there unconfirmed that was a study group, of that group, the conservative group I was talking about, and that was targeted, I have lots of questions about that. Again, no theories yet because nothing's confirmed, but why was it this girl? What are the chances this particular girl was shot in this attack at Brown University out of all of their student population? And if there were others that were part of this group. Again, we're not getting that answer yet because of the pathetic investigation of Providence, Rhode Island, and Brown University police. You're not getting anything yet. I don't know if we will. But you start to get answers when you ask questions like that. And it's totally, totally fair to ask that question. You got to make up your own mind. Another horrific story, and I promise you it'll get better after this. I know it was a lot of horrific news, but we don't write the rules. We just kind of react to it. Bondi Beach, Australia. You heard about this as well. But how you heard about this, to me, is the story. Would you have heard about this a few years ago if you didn't have freedom of information online now? I don't think you would have. I think you would have heard about a random beach attack that happened to be on the first day and night of Hanukkah in Australia. That's what you would have heard so far. But now you're hearing from witnesses about what this was. You probably heard the horrific details. We don't need to go into that. 2 lunatics, radicalized Islamic lunatics, opened fire at a Hanukkah celebration. They killed 16, I believe it was 16 victims now, a lot more injured than that. There were some heroic acts. One guy, I saw a video, again, the freedom of video, that we get information now. One guy did an awesome disarm of one of the scumbags. I mean, tackled him from behind, took the rifle away from him, and then they jumped on him. That was great. It was a father and son terrorist team that actually did this. Just absolutely horrific. To make it even more horrific, how often do we see these days? Stories like this, where it was a call for police action, there was a call for intervention, there was a call for something, because it went on for a horrific amount of time, and nothing was going on, even when the cops arrived there. Too many witnesses have said the exact same thing, like this guy. This is awful, but he tells a story.
Simple as that. 20 minutes was 4 policemen there. Nobody gave fire back. Nothing. Like they are froze. Like for it looked like 20 minutes. Like, and they shoot. The guy changed magazine. I look at him all the time. I was doing my babies under me, and I look at that, and it's just rifle and a pistol, and just shoot. And the other one was under. They started to come close to the audience. I think one of the people took his rifle and shoot him. That's one of them. That's what I saw.
If you're close to that Parkland story, the MSD school shooting in South Florida, like I am, because I was, on the air at the time, and I'm down here. I knew a lot of kids that actually went to that school. If you are close to that story, or at least you're familiar with it and you followed it, you know how chilling that guy's words are. Because he said the exact same thing, which has been a story, a tale told many times from people that were close to that investigation in Broward County a few years ago. Was it 2018? Cops showed up but didn't do anything. That's why that's so chilling and such a bad problem. That starts from the top because they're told not to do anything. That was horrific. In Broward several years ago, they were told, and there were Coral Springs cops that ran by Broward County deputies going like this, like, what are you doing? And they ran in because the sheriff's deputies were under orders not to go in. And that's not an opinion. That's fact. That's come out in the investigation. That is just fact. Boy, it sure sounds like the same thing happened in Bondi Beach, Australia. And that's horrific. So it goes to the top. Just a celebration, a religious celebration of people. I don't care what they're made up of. It's just it shouldn't happen. How does it happen? Well, I got an idea. I think you can go to your leadership once again, which is just horrific. And I gotta wonder, you've seen this thing. Australia was awful during COVID. I talked to some Australians. I was on vacation and ran to them, and they actually escaped. They escaped their country to get out of it during COVID because they were going door by door, making sure people were in there. Are they too far gone? I don't know. But maybe this is something that causes a bit of an uprising where they demand better leadership. Let's talk about that leadership. Well, the Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, before I even say it where he's going with this, what he's going to say. He is. A call for gun control, further gun control in 3, 2, 1.
And I want to conclude finally by saying that the government is prepared to take whatever action is necessary. Included in that is the need for tougher gun laws.
Boom. Right there. Of course he's going to say that. Of course, because it's because I disagree with it policy-wise, it's just such a lazy go-to. Oh, there's a mass shooting from 2 terrorists, targeting Jewish people. It's a Hanukkah celebration. Well, it's the gun's fault. Okay, right. It's not the people you have imported to your country for years now that hate your country, hate your people, hate your culture. That's not it. That's not opinion, that's fact, right? You've imported people that hate you. And you're surprised when this happens. And your only response is, well, This means we're going to need more stringent and tougher gun laws. Okay. None of this should surprise you. The story with, and multiple witnesses, not just the guy we played, multiple story of the cops not doing anything, the call for tougher gun laws, all of this comes from the top and pathetic leadership. Let's go back for a quick second. Remember I said I don't think you would even hear this story if we didn't have free information, or at least the start of it these days. If Elon didn't buy Twitter and turn it into X and start to get these stories out there, I don't think you would have heard about the Bondi Beach story. I don't think we'd be talking about it. I don't think. You would have heard about a random headline buried somewhere that would say, random attack on Bondi Beach, Australia during Hanukkah. That's what you would have gotten. That's about it. But now you have video, independent journalists, people that post this kind of stuff out there to get the story out there. Here's an interview from the same guy, Anthony Albanese, the Australian Prime Minister, talking about how he hates Elon and he hates the fact that he has X and he hates the fact that information is out there. Said it right here. This is the same guy, and you tell me that this isn't because of horrible leadership.
I want to ask you about Elon Musk. He's mocked you this morning for choosing censorship and propaganda over free speech and truth. What's your response to that?
Well, this is a bloke who's chosen ego and showing violence over common sense. I think that Australians will shake their head when they think that this billionaire is prepared to go to court fighting for the right to sow division and to show violent videos, which...
Showing violent videos, sowing division. In other words, we used to call that the truth getting out there, but that guy doesn't like it, and you got to ask yourself why. And not enough Australians have asked themselves why. Why is that guy your prime minister? What has happened to you? What went on? Australians, of all people. Well, I always kind of grew up thinking they were the toughest people on earth and most independent. How somebody like that gets in? Probably because they controlled the flow of information. But they don't anymore, and they're not getting it back in the bottle, and they hate it. That's why you start to get the truth. And it takes a long time. It's a long road to get people like that out of power. But it happens. And it happens with a slow trickle of truth to get stories like Bondi Beach out there, as horrific as it is. And I know it's not the nicest thing to see over the weekend. But you start to get the truth, and you start to hear from people. And you start to have independent journalists on outlets. That's not the only one, but outlets like X. That's what starts to get some change. So let's hope they get it. Let's wrap this up with, God, I don't know if we've ever had 3 more horrific stories to do on the live stream. But anyway, it's the reaction to it. Speaking of reaction, remember we were told from the video from the Seditious Six? Remember those CIA and former military and current military people who were saying, you got to ignore orders from President Trump. You need to. And it was a specific message to the leadership of the military, the young leaders coming up at West Point and the Naval Academy and the Air Force Academy. And remember all that? Here's some great news for you. I don't think they're listening to the message. Because a whole big lot of those leaders for the future of America were at, M&B Bank Stadium, whatever. It's where the Ravens play, but it's also where they do the Army-Navy game over the weekend. Here's the reaction that those people who are supposed to defy orders from the president, remember that? This is their reaction to the president walking on the field. Yeah, 75,000 people at that game. And they all just hate him, don't they? Yeah, right. Those are Naval Academy and West Point students. I don't think the Seditious Six, I don't think their message actually took. All right, what's the message? What's the takeaway? Despite all these horrific stories, there is hope. Look at, as an example, can't find a more horrific story than Rob Reiner getting stabbed by what they think is his son and found by his daughter and his wife. Oh, my God. But if you want a takeaway that tells you we still have a heart and soul in this country and we're not lost, the reaction tells you the whole story. Because most people, not all, but most people, even ones that vehemently disagreed with him because he was kind of a loon, feel terrible about it. We still have a heart and soul in this country that's never going to change. That's the main takeaway. Thanks for finding me on the live stream. Podcast replay, every single channel, Facebook, YouTube, even clips on TikTok. and on X here as well. And the audio podcast gets posted in just a couple of minutes. Do me a favor. Go on to your favorite audio podcast, because that seems to be where everybody's going for this thing. It's growing by leaps and bounds. Go to your favorite audio podcast channel, no matter what it is, Spotify, iHeart, Apple Podcasts, and download, because we post the audio version after the show every single day. Thanks. On Spotify, you got to press like. That's how you follow on Spotify. But follow, too, and subscribe. Thanks so much. Appreciate you, as always. Horrific stories, but it's okay. There's always good news. There's always a win in it. We still have a heart and soul in our country. Remember that. Make it a wicked awesome Monday. I'll talk to you tomorrow.